There is one number that completely changed the way how you buy your first home, and most people get it wrong. In today's video, I am breaking down the real math behind the down payment, how much you should put, and the exact strategy that I used to buy my first house. With so much misinformation out there, let's clear it out in today's video whether 5% or 20% makes more sense for you. Hello everyone, my name is Parth Soni. I'm a realtor based in Kitchener-Waterloo region and Toronto. If you are someone who's looking to invest or buy your first home, let me know. Happy to connect with you. You can book a one-on-one call with me. The first link in the description. And the only thing I ask that if you find any value out of this video, please do subscribe and like my channel. So the very first thing, let's clear out what is the minimum down payment if you are someone who's planning to buy a house in Canada. So if you are someone who's planning to buy a house with a purchase price of 500,000 or less, the minimum down payment in this case will be 5%. If you are someone who's looking in between 500,000 to $1.5 million, and by the way, to give you an idea, this amount is increased from 1 million to $1.5 million as of December of 2024. So it's recently increased. So let's check it out how much you need to pay. The very first one would be 5% of the purchase price of the first $500,000 and 10% of the remainder of above $500,000. To give you an idea, if you are someone who is planning to buy a $700,000 house, so that first $500,000 you will pay 5%, and then remaining $200,000 you will pay 10% on it. And anything above $1.5 million, you will need 20% for the purchase price. And to give you a reference for this one, to set up a baseline, this is for the home for a primary purchase where you will be planning to live. Now, let's check out what are the pros and cons when you are going with a 5%, that is a minimum or a minimum down payment, and when you are going with a 20%. So, the very first one is the 5% or the minimum down payment based on your purchase price. The very first pro is the lower interest rate. Many people don't know, but this is considered as an insured mortgage. So when you go with 5% or anything less than 20% down payment, you have to take a mortgage insurance. And that's why bank feel much more safer as your mortgage insurance. So the interest rate will be a little bit on a lower side. The second advantage in this one is that you can enter market early. Now, what I mean by that is depending on where you are located, your home purchase price could vary a lot. Let's say if you're someone who's looking in a GTA or Toronto or Kitchener-Waterloo region, the purchase price of homes are really high. And if you're someone who's planning to gather 20%, the full 20% down payment, it could take years. Like based on the salary, let's say even as a couple, if you are saving $1,000 each, that is $2,000 a month just towards the house, it could take few years to just go from 5% to 20%. And at that point of time, who knows what the market does. And here are some of the disadvantages when you're going with a minimum down payment. The very first one in this one is the mortgage insurance. As we discussed earlier, you have to get a mortgage insurance depending on your down payment and depending on your purchase price, this varies. The second is the higher monthly payment. Of course, when you are not putting much down, you will have less equity and the monthly payment goes high. The second in this one is the 25-year mortgage. That is a maximum you can get as amortization as a 25-year. If you're going for, there are certain rules, you can go 30-year with new homes and stuff like that. But if you're going with a 20% down payment, this is something you can extend to 30 years. Now let's check out what happens when you go with a 20% down payment and what are the advantage and disadvantage of. So the very first one, when you're going for a 20% down payment, you will have more equity. So let's say in near future, if you're planning to get HELOC, that is home equity line of credit, you will have a decent equity and you can use it. When if you're going for a minimum down payment, it's very hard to get HELOC based on the equity structure you have managed. The next is the mortgage insurance. So in this one, you don't have to get any mortgage insurance as you are doing 20% or higher down payment. And you will also be eligible for a 30-year amortization or 30-year mortgage that could lower your monthly mortgage or monthly mortgage payments. Now let's check out what are the cons of this one. As we discussed, like the higher interest rate, when you are switching from minimum down payment to 20% down payment, the interest rate varies. It could vary from zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.3 depending on your profile, and yeah, it could vary much more as well. The second one, which is very important in this one, is the delayed home buying process. Now, depending in which kind of market you enter, let's say if the market is going in upward trajectory, then it will be very hard for someone, even they have 20% down payment, because at the time they come up with 20% down payment, the market is in a very different trajectory. It might be like shoot up like 5 6% year over year, and by the time you collect that in 3 4 years, It's a totally different market. The last in this one is that we may change in a government regulation. Now we don't know what will happen in near future or what will happen like when you're planning to buy a house in 3 4 years. There are so many government regulation changes over here. So at that point of time, it could be depend what government we are in and what are the regulations they come in related to housing. Now this could affect like DC charges, that is development charges. If you are someone who knows in Toronto in last 2 or 3 years, it shoot up. So if you are someone who wait for 2 or 3 years only to discover that the DC charges, that is development charges, shoot up by 30, 40, $50,000, then that will reflect in your purchase price. Now let's discuss a real life scenario where a couple is buying a house worth $700,000, and which is very likely if you're someone who is buying in Kitchener-Waterloo region where I operate. Now let's take this example. The purchase price is $700,000. Let's consider a minimum down payment that is roughly about, in this case, 6.4 or something. It's not 5%. As we discussed earlier, it's 6.4 something. So based on the minimum down payment criteria, we are getting $45,000 as your down payment. The mortgage insurance will be 26,200, and the loan amount will be $681,200. Now, just to give you an idea, this I have considered as a 4 year, 4% interest rate and a 25-year amortization. So the interest paid during the full tenure, that is 25 years, it will be roughly about $393,000. That's just in interest, not towards the principal. Now let's check out what happens when the same couple put 20% down payment. So same, everything is same, purchase price is same. The 20% of 700,000 will be $140,000. As you're paying 20% down payment, you don't have to get a mortgage insurance. So your mortgage insurance will be zero, and the total loan amount will be $560,000. Now, if you see over here, this is something very interesting. The interest paid at 4% over a period of 25 years will be $323,000 as compared to $393,000 when you go with a minimum down. And difference, if you see over here, that's $70,000 difference just by switching from 5% to 20%. But here's the catch. Now that $70,000 difference plus you also have to pay $26,200, that is for mortgage insurance. So the total difference over a period of 25 years will be $96,261. So someone who is paying 5% or the minimum down payment and someone who is going with a 20% down payment, when the tenure completes at 25-year amortization, this is how much more or how much less that person would have made. But just to give you an idea, let's run the actual scenarios. The scenario which we ran over here, that is and based on theoretical number. As we previously mentioned, when you go with a 20% down payment, the mortgage or the interest rate in this one will be a little bit higher compared to a minimum down payment. So if we run based on actual scenario, this is what it will be. Let's say the interest paid for the 5%, it's or the minimum down payment, it's same as 4%. And when you're going with a 20% or uninsured mortgage, that is also, by the way, called as uninsured mortgage, your interest rate will be roughly in a category of 4.2%. And by the way, this is a very realistic number what my clients are getting. So nothing modified over here, very realistic number. So let's say if you're doing 4.2%, you will still pay less in interest, that is $342,000. But if you see over here, the overall, the the total dollar value decreases so much, roughly about 18 to $19,000. In this one, you are paying over $77,900, whereas in that one, you are paying $96,200. Now, here's a very interesting thing. Like, I look at very differently. When you are saving or when you have enough amount of down payment and still you are choosing to go with a minimum down payment, by the way, that is something that what I did, that what we did for our first home. So let's look at the other way. Let's say if you're not going for a full down payment, that is 20%, and you're still sticking with a minimum down payment and investing that down payment into S&P 500 or anywhere you are planning to invest. For the purpose of this video, I have considered S&P 500 because that's where most people would consider if you're planning to buy a house and invest it. So let's check out the down payment difference. In that one, with 20% down payment, we'll be paying $140,000, and with minimum down payment, we are paying $45,000. So that's a difference of $95,000. Let's say that $95,000 is invested in S&P 500 for 25 years at 6%. So that $95,000 will become $407,000. By the way, I have considered 6% over here. If you see the history, S&P 500 has given little over 10%. I believe it's 10.3 or 10.4. But when you match that inflation, it comes at roughly about 6.3 to 6.4. So I've considered 6, a little safer side over here. And that 95,000 will be converted into $470,000 with a total profit of $312,000. Of course, how you arrange your system, you might have to pay tax on it and so and so. So just we are just doing quick number over here, not going so much into detail. But if you are someone who wants to go a little bit more into detail, yeah, you can book a call with me. So you see over here, $312,000 difference versus that 92 or 77 or whatever you want to consider. Now, here are a couple of reasons why I choose to go with a minimum down payment for my primary house. The very first reason is that you can enter market very quickly. As I mentioned, like we don't want to bet what will happen in the future. We want to enter into market as quickly as possible as we had the down payment so that we can reap the benefit of that equity and when the market goes up, we can have that benefit. The second benefit is the opportunity cost. Like if you're someone like me, opportunity cost matters very much. It depends on person to person, but this is something important to me. That's why I put it down over. The third one is invest in future real estate. Now, let's say even if you have 20% down payment, now if you're going full on with your primary house, then to collect or to accumulate that down payment for your future real estate purchases, it might be very difficult once you buy a house. So what I recommend to most of my client is like go with a minimum down payment. Even if you have money, take that aside if you have a plan to invest in real estate in near future. And the last one is to have extra cash for bad days or when the opportunity arises. Let's say if you lose a job or something, when you go with a minimum down payment, you'll still have that extra cash that can sustain your house. Or then there is, or if let's say if any opportunity arises, like literally what happened based on the tariff in last 10 to 15 days, that the stock market crashed, and if you have that extra money, you can invest it in that. And those are my reasons why I go with a minimum down payment. There is no right or wrong. Do what suits best for you. But if you're someone who's looking to get into housing market and want to run different scenarios, let me know. Happy to jump on a call. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you in the next one.